Dear friend, have you ever truly stopped to look deep into a child's eyes, to listen to their pure laughter, or to feel the unconditional trust in their small embrace? Amidst the busyness of adult life, we sometimes rush past these tender souls. In such moments, the teaching of the Lord Jesus echoes like a warm whisper, a loving reminder. Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. This teaching is not a stern reprimand, but a gentle revelation of the infinite value of every tiny being. The Lord does not just say that children are lovely. He reveals a sacred truth to us. They are enveloped and protected by angels who hold a very special place, those who are always in the presence of God Himself. This means that, in the eyes of heaven, no child is insignificant or forgotten. Every cry, every smile of theirs is heard in the most noble place. Therefore, when we face a child, let us remember that we are standing before a precious treasure of the Lord. The way we treat them, our patience, appreciation, and gentleness is also how we show our respect for the One who created them and always watches over them. And perhaps it is because of this preciousness that He once said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." From this warm whisper about the value of a child in God's eyes, we not only receive a lesson in compassion, but also open up a whole sky of profound philosophy. This teaching is like a key, decoding the deepest aspects of value, of the visible and invisible worlds, of how we perceive power and humility. From this teaching, we can reflect on vibrant philosophies for life, not just for children, but for the very way we view the world and treat others. Here are the philosophies illuminated by that sacred teaching. Before we begin, we kindly invite you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel to help spread this valuable content to your family and friends. We thank you. And now, we invite you to listen. 1. The value of a soul is not measured by stature or status. We often judge others by the power, wealth, or wisdom they display. But God looks at the intrinsic value, that which cannot be measured by worldly standards. A child, weak and naive in the eyes of the world, holds infinite value before the Most High. One day, the apostles gathered around Jesus by the shore of the Sea of Galilee, arguing about who would be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Peter, with his impetuous nature, asked directly, "Teacher, who among us is the greatest?" Jesus did not answer immediately. He quietly called a child playing nearby, had him stand among the apostles, held him in his arms, and said, "Truly I tell you, the value of this child in my Father's eyes is greater than all the power you are seeking. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me, but whoever despises one, beware, for their angel is beholding the face of my Father in heaven." 2. What is unseen to the naked eye holds the greatest power. Our world is dominated by the visible: money, armies, fortresses. The teaching of Jesus directs us to an invisible yet powerful reality: the protection of angels, the gaze of God the Father. This divine protection is stronger than any army. Once passing through the gate of Jericho, Jesus and the apostle Andrew saw a wealthy tax collector shooing away some begging children who were clinging to his cloak. Andrew said with concern, "Poor children, they are so weak and lonely." Jesus looked at him and said, "Andrew, your eyes see them as lonely, but faith will show you otherwise. Right now, their guardian angels have not left their side, and their silent prayers carry more weight before my Father's throne than that tax collector's bag of gold. 3. The innocence of a child is a mirror reflecting heaven. We adults, with our calculations, prejudices, and doubts, have built walls that separate us from simple truth. Children, with their absolute trust and pure hearts, naturally reflect the qualities of the kingdom of heaven: simplicity, humility, and faith. In the temple courtyard, the scribes and Pharisees were questioning Jesus with tricky questions about the law. Nearby, a few children were chasing each other, their laughter echoing in a corner of the courtyard. John, seeing this, was about to signal for them to be quiet. But Jesus stopped him and said to him, "Let them laugh, John. They seek the kingdom of heaven in old scrolls and complex debates. Don't you see? The kingdom of heaven is right here, in the untainted laughter of these children." 4. How we treat the weakest is the measure of our spiritual reverence. True piety is not shown in elaborate rituals or beautiful prayers, but in our concrete actions towards the least among society. To despise a child is to disregard the divine protection that God has placed upon them. A widow brought her young son to the synagogue to hear Jesus preach. The child fidgeted and babbled occasionally, which annoyed an elder who signaled for the mother to take her child out. Seeing this, Jesus stopped his sermon, looked directly at the elder, and said, "Sir, would you cast out from my Father's house a soul that all of heaven is watching? This child's babbling in the sanctuary is more pleasing to my Father than the silence of a proud heart." 5. God's measure is different from the world's measure. In the world, people honor the strong, the rich, the eloquent. But before God, the humble are lifted up, and the little ones are cherished. He looks at the heart, not at the outward appearance or social status. The people of Nazareth whispered about Jesus. "Isn't he the son of Joseph the carpenter? What is so noble about him?" Someone in the crowd shouted, "We need great descents. Mighty leaders, not the son of a craftsman." Jesus looked at them sadly and said, "You seek greatness in noisy places, but my Father places his greatness in the silent things. You despise a carpenter, but you do not realize that the laboring hands of a righteous man are more precious than the scepter of an unjust king. Likewise, you look down on little children, but you do not know that the entire kingdom of heaven is bending down to listen to them." 6. In every tiny seed is a great forest. Looking at a child, we see not only their small present form, but also the infinite potential that God has sown within them. To despise a child is to crush a future, a potential that could change the world. The Apostle Thomas, who often doubted, looked at a group of children playing in the dirt and said, "Teacher, they are just children. They only know how to play. How can they understand your profound teachings?" Jesus bent down, picked up a tiny mustard seed in his palm, and showed it to Thomas. "Thomas, do you see how small this seed is? But when it is sown, it will grow into a large tree for the birds of the air to nest in. In each of those children is such a seed. Do not look at their smallness today, but look at the forest of faith they can become tomorrow." 7. The path to the highest truth often lies in the simplest things. Human intellect often seeks complex paths to truth, but Jesus always shows us that truth is often revealed through the simplest things: a lily, a sparrow, and especially a child. A scholar from Jerusalem came to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, I have read all the books of the law and the prophets, but I still feel confused. What is the shortest path to understanding the will of God?" Jesus pointed to a little girl who was giving her mother a wildflower she had just picked. He said, "Look there, the gratitude of the child for receiving life, and her love in giving a simple gift. That is the beginning and the end of all law. 8. Every soul has an invisible, divine protection. We are not alone on our earthly journey. The teaching of Jesus affirms a comforting truth. There is a divine providence that always watches over us, especially the weakest and most vulnerable. This protection is an invisible shield against the contempt of the world. As Jesus and his disciples were sailing across a stormy lake, they were terrified. Matthew cried out, "Teacher, we're going to die." After calming the storm, Jesus said to them, "Where is your faith? You fear the visible storm, but forget the invisible protection. My Father in heaven even sends angels to guard a child sleeping soundly on the shore. Would he abandon you in the middle of the sea?" 9. The arrogance of adults blinds them to great truths. Complacency about knowledge, experience, and status makes it difficult for adults to accept simple truths. They think they know everything, and therefore cannot see what God is revealing through the little things. A group of Pharisees mocked Jesus when they saw him talking and playing with children. One of them said, "A teacher who wastes his time on kids." Jesus turned around, his eyes serious, yet full of compassion. "It is because you think you are so great that you cannot bend down to pick up the pearls of the kingdom of heaven scattered at your feet. You cover your ears to the laughter of children, so you will also be deaf to the call of my Father." 10. To listen to the little one is to listen to a message from on high. Because children have a special connection to God, their naive words and innocent questions sometimes contain profound messages. When we dismiss a child's words, we may be dismissing a reminder that God wants to send us. One evening, Jesus was resting under an olive tree, surrounded by adults listening to him. A little boy ran up, tugged on his robe, and asked, "Teacher, why does the sun have to go to sleep?" A few adults chuckled at the naive question. But Jesus smiled, patted the boy's head, and said to the crowd, "You laugh, but none of you dare to ask such a sincere question. This boy asks about the rest of all creation, while you, who are weary, never dare to ask my Father how to find rest for your souls. Today, this boy has asked the most important question on your behalf." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 11. The hurt of a child echoes to the heavens. A scratch on a child's skin may heal, but a wound in their soul will leave an echo that never fades before the throne of God the Father. It is not a private matter, but an event that shakes the entire spiritual world. In a small village in Samaria, Jesus saw a man yelling at and pushing his son down because the boy had accidentally spilled a basket of olives. The child didn't cry out loud, just sat on the ground, his shoulders trembling. Jesus approached, helped the child up, and dusted off his clothes. Then he turned to the father and said, "Friend, do you think only this child heard your shouts? I tell you right now, his trembling resounds louder than thunder before my Father. You can spill a basket of olives, but never harm a soul that all of heaven is protecting." 12. True power is the power to protect the weak. The world honors the power to dominate, the power to conquer. But power by God's standard is the ability to shelter, the strength to embrace and lift up those who cannot protect themselves. The greatest power is when we use it to serve the least among us. James and John, the two brothers nicknamed Sons of Thunder, came to Jesus and said, "Teacher, Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." Jesus looked at them, then at the children playing nearby, and said, "You seek power to command, but the power my Father gives is to protect. Do you see that mother hen? She does not have the talons of an eagle, but her power is to spread her wings to protect her chicks. Whoever wants to be great in my kingdom, let them learn to be a shelter for others." 13. To enter the kingdom of heaven, one must become small. The gate to the kingdom of heaven is high and wide, but the entrance is very low. Only those willing to bow down, to abandon the prit and cumbersome ego of adulthood, can pass through. To become like a child is not to become naive, but to become humble. Nicodemus, a member of the Jewish ruling council, came to Jesus at night and asked about the kingdom of heaven. Jesus told him, "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." Nicodemus was confused. How can someone be born when they are old? Jesus smiled gently. "I'm not speaking of being born of the flesh. I speak of being born of the Spirit. Look at a child. He has nothing in his hands. He is completely dependent and trusting. You must shed all your wisdom, status, and prejudices to become small like that. Only then can you enter." 14. The presence of children purifies a space. Wherever children are present, with their clear laughter and innocent lack of calculation, the atmosphere seems to be purified. The bitterness, the schemes, the lies of the adult world seem to retreat before that pristine innocence. The apostles were arguing heatedly with a group of Pharisees about observing the Sabbath. The atmosphere became tense, and sharp words were exchanged. Suddenly, a little girl ran into their midst, holding a grasshopper she had just caught, and joyfully showed it to everyone. Everyone's attention abruptly shifted to the grasshopper and the girl's radiant smile. The argument naturally dissolved. Jesus looked at the apostles and said, "You see, you use a treasury of laws to fight, but this little girl used just one grasshopper to bring peace." 15. God overlooks no one, not even the smallest. In human perspective, we tend to focus on what is large and prominent and overlook the small details. But in God's eyes, no creature is too small to be forgotten. Every hair on the head is counted, and every soul is known by name. A shepherd came and told Jesus that he had just found one lost sheep from his flock of 100. He was overjoyed. Jesus said to those around him, "This shepherd rejoices over one lost sheep that is found. So is my Father in heaven. He does not just look at the flock of all humanity. He sees each and every sheep, especially the children who are considered unimportant. To him, there is no crowd, only precious souls." 16. A child's gaze is a gaze without prejudice. Before the world taught us about distinctions of rich, poor, noble, lowly, race, or religion, we once had a vision as clear as a child's. Children look at a person and see just a person, not the labels that society puts on them. Jesus was talking to a tax collector named Levi, a man despised by all of Jewish society. Others stood at a distance, looking on with judgmental eyes. A young boy passed by, saw Jesus and Levi laughing together, and he too ran over and smiled. He didn't know who Levi was. He only saw joy and friendliness. Jesus said to those who were judging, "You look at Levi and see a sinner. This boy looks at Levi and sees a friend. Who do you think has a gaze closer to my Father's? 17. The dependence of a child teaches us about entrusting ourselves to God. A child completely trusts that their parents will feed, clothe, and protect them. That dependence is not weakness, but absolute surrender. It is the image of the relationship that God desires from us. Complete trust, without worry, without doubt. A rich man asked Jesus, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" After hearing the answer, he went away sad because he could not part with his wealth. Jesus watched him go and said to his disciples, "How hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. But look at the baby sleeping in its mother's arms. It owns nothing, yet it has everything: safety, love, and peace." Our souls must also learn to rest peacefully in the arms of my Father like that. 18. A child's smile can heal a broken heart. Amidst the pain, loss, and burdens of life, it is sometimes not lofty advice or complex philosophies that can heal us. Sometimes the most effective medicine comes from an innocent smile, a simple gesture of love from a child. A woman named Mary Magdalene was weeping at Jesus' feet for her sins. Her heart was heavy with anguish. Just then, a curious child approached. Seeing her cry, the child offered her its own cloth doll as a comfort. Mary looked up, saw the child's clear eyes and sincere gesture, and she smiled through her tears. Jesus said softly to her, "You see, my Father's mercy sometimes comes in the smallest forms." 19. Don't teach children with empty words. Teach them with love. Children may not remember all the words we say, but they will never forget the feeling we give them. Our love, patience, and living example are the most profound lessons, with the power to shape their character more than any sermon. A scribe boasted to Jesus, "Teacher, every day I teach my son about the 10 Commandments and the laws of our fathers." Jesus asked him, "So yesterday, when you taught him the commandment, 'You shall not steal,' did you share your bread with the beggar on the street corner? When you taught him, 'Love your neighbor,' did you smile and greet the neighbor you dislike? Children do not learn with their ears. They learn with their eyes and with their whole heart." 20. The forgiveness of children is a lesson in God's grace. 2 children can fight over a toy and get angry with each other, but a moment later, they can be happily playing together again, as if nothing happened. They do not hold on to bitterness. They do not harbor grudges. Their forgiveness is quick and complete, a living image of the infinite mercy of God. Peter asked Jesus, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Then he pointed to 2 children who had just finished arguing and were now running hand in hand. "Peter, learn forgiveness from them. Their hearts have no room for resentment. My Father's heart is the same, always open to forgive his children who return." 21. In a child's silence, there is a rich inner world. We often equate children's silence with emptiness or a lack of understanding. But in reality, in those quiet moments, they are observing, contemplating, and building a whole world of imagination and emotion of their own. We need to respect that silent space. Jesus was sitting with his disciples, and a boy was also sitting nearby, silently looking up at the sky. The Apostle Bartholomew said, "This boy is strange. He says nothing." Jesus replied, "You only hear his silence, but I hear the questions he is asking the stars. You only see him sitting still, but I see his soul traveling to the ends of the universe. Never underestimate the silence of a contemplative soul. 22. To protect the innocence of children is to protect heaven's legacy on earth. Innocence is not ignorance, but a state of a pure soul, not yet sullied by the cynicism and bitterness of the world. It is a small garden of Eden left on earth. Our task is to be its gardeners, protecting it from weeds. A group of Roman soldiers passed by, speaking vulgar words and laughing crudely. A few children nearby heard them and began to curiously repeat the words. Jesus immediately led the children to another place and told them a story about birds. Afterwards, he said to his disciples, "Sowing a bitter word into a child's ear is worse than sowing thorns in good soil. For the soil can be tilled again, but a soul, once stained, is very difficult to cleanse." 23. Every child is a promise of a new beginning. When we look at a newborn baby, we do not see the past. We do not see mistakes or failures. We only see a wide-open future, a blank slate, a promise of hope and endless possibilities. Every child is a chance for the world to be made better. The villagers were gossiping about a woman's sin. They recounted her past and gave her no chance to change. At that moment, the woman was holding her newborn child. Jesus pointed to the baby and said to the crowd, "You look at the mother and see only the past, but God looks at the child and sees a future. Every time a child is born, my Father gives the world a chance to start over. Are you willing to accept that chance?" 24. A child's curiosity is the flame of discovering truth. Why is the most important question for a child. Their relentless curiosity is not an annoyance, but the most primal drive to seek understanding and discover truth. To extinguish a child's curiosity is to blow out the sacred flame of intellect. A boy kept following Jesus and asking all sorts of questions. Why is the grass green? Why do clouds fly? Why can't fish talk? The disciples started to get annoyed, but Jesus patiently answered every question. He said, "You want to seek the kingdom of heaven, but you are reluctant to answer questions about the world my Father has created." This boy's curiosity is the prayer of a soul thirsting for truth. Never extinguish it. 25. The small hand of a child can lead an adult back to the right path. Sometimes, amidst the complex paths and difficult choices of life, a simple gesture, a truthful word from a child can become a compass, reminding us of the core values we have forgotten and leading us back to the right way. A man was angrily arguing with his neighbor over a property line. Neither would yield. His little daughter ran out, took her father's hand, and said, "Daddy, don't be angry anymore. Come play with me." The small hand and simple words made the father pause. His anger vanished. Jesus, who witnessed the story, said to his followers, "A wise man might not have calmed him, but a small hand led him away from the path of hatred." 26. The cry of a child is a call to the deepest compassion. The sound of a child's cry has a special power. It transcends all language and cultural barriers, touching the deepest part of compassion in every human being. To ignore that cry is to harden the most human part of ourselves. On the road to Jerusalem, the crowd was large and noisy. A child got separated from its mother and began to cry bitterly. Many people just walked past. But Jesus stopped, parted the crowd, picked up the child, and comforted it until the mother was found. He said, "Amidst all the praises and prayers, my Father in heaven always hears most clearly the cry of a frightened child. Your compassion must be the same." 27. The justice of the kingdom of heaven begins with defending the little ones. The justice of the world often defends the powerful, but the justice of God is the opposite. It starts from the bottom up by speaking for the voiceless, protecting the defenseless, and siding with the oppressed and despised. A rich landowner sued a poor laborer for losing some tools. He demanded that the laborer compensate him, or he would take his children as slaves. Jesus stood up and said to the landowner, "You demand justice for items made of iron, but you are unjust to lives made of flesh and blood. My Father's justice is not written in your ledgers, but in the hearts of those frightened children. Forgive them, and my Father will judge you justly." 28. Investing in a child is investing in eternity. Build a building, it will fall. Hoard gold and silver, it will be stolen. But sow a seed of love, hope, and faith in the soul of a child, and its fruit will last for all eternity. The influence we have on a soul is eternal. A poor woman used her last coin to buy a piece of bread for her hungry child. The disciples saw this and felt pity for her poverty. But Jesus said, "She is not just buying a piece of bread, she is investing in the kingdom of heaven." The love she sows in her child's heart today will become a treasure in heaven that no moth can destroy. That is the wisest investment. 29. A child's joy is a reflection of God's joy. When a child laughs heartily, without a care, it is one of the most beautiful images of life. That pure joy not only warms the human heart, but it is also a reflection, a small ray of the great joy that God Himself feels when He sees His children happy. After Jesus healed many people, a group of children ran around Him, dancing and singing. Some adults thought they were being a nuisance. But Jesus looked at them happily and said, "Let them sing. You offer my Father solemn prayers, but they offer Him joy. What do you think my Father prefers? Their singing is the music of the kingdom of heaven." 30. When we bend down to a child, we are looking up to God. The act of bending down to be at eye level with a child, to listen to their story, to hold them in our arms, is one of the most humble and beautiful actions. In that moment, paradoxically, we are not lowering ourselves, but are actually lifting our souls, drawing closer to the presence of God who dwells in what is small and humble. One day, Jesus was walking through a crowd, and everyone was trying to push forward to be near Him. But He stopped and bent down very low to talk to a little girl playing by the roadside. He asked her name, asked about the doll she was holding. Peter found this strange and asked, "Teacher, everyone is looking for you. Why did you stop?" Jesus looked up, his gaze still gentle from looking at the little girl, and said, "Peter, you all try to look up to find me, but I bend down to meet my Father in the eyes of this child. When you learn to bend down, you will see that heaven is very near." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 31. A child's play is a form of prayer. We adults often see children's play as frivolous, a way to kill time. But in reality, it is how they interact with the world, express their joy for life, and offer the Creator the purest form of worship, the full enjoyment of the gift of life. Jesus saw a group of children diligently building a temple out of sand and pebbles by a stream. A Pharisee passed by and sneered, "How blasphemous! daring to make a game out of sacred images." Jesus calmly replied, "You see a game, but I see a prayer in action. The joy and sincerity they put into building this sand temple is more pleasing to my Father than the offerings made in a stone temple with a heavy heart." 32. The honesty of a child is the sword of truth. The adult world is full of harmless white lies, diplomatic niceties, and veiled truths. The unvarnished honesty of a child, sometimes brutal, has the power to cut through the shell of hypocrisy, revealing the naked truth in a liberating way. Everyone was gathered around, flattering a wealthy elder on his piety. Suddenly, his young son, who was playing nearby, ran up and asked, "Daddy, why did you tell Mommy you were too tired to help our neighbor, but you were able to go to the meeting?" The crowd fell silent. Jesus smiled and said, "The tongues of adults can build walls of lies, but the truthful words of a child can bring them down in a single moment." 33. A promise to a child is a sacred covenant. Breaking a promise to an adult might be a social misstep, but breaking a promise to a child is to shatter a sacred trust, damaging their foundation of love and security. To God, who always keeps his covenants, a promise to a child carries immense weight. A father promised to take his son to watch the fishermen pull in their nets in the afternoon, but he got busy with work and forgot. The son sat by the door, waiting with a sad face. Jesus passed by, saw this, and said to the father, "Friend, you have not just forgotten an outing, you have fractured a world. My Father in heaven never breaks his promises to his children. Learn from him, for a father's promise is the foundation of a child's faith." 34. Children teach us to live in the present. We adults are bound by the regrets of the past and worries for the future. Children are masters of the present moment. They immerse themselves completely in what they are doing, whether it's watching an ant or building a sand castle. That is the key to peace. Martha was bustling about, worriedly preparing a meal for Jesus and the disciples. She complained because her sister Mary was just sitting still. Jesus pointed to a child in the garden who was engrossed in chasing a butterfly and said to Martha, "Martha, you are worried about the upcoming meal, but that child has found a whole paradise in one butterfly. Learn to live fully in the gift of the present, and all your worries will pass away." 35. To see the world through a child's eyes is to see miracles in ordinary things. We have become jaded. A rain shower is an inconvenience. A flower is a given. But to a child, every raindrop is a jewel, and every flower is a universe. The ability to see miracles in the ordinary is a gift we have lost and need to find again. It started to rain. Adults hurried for shelter, grumbling about their wet clothes. But the children cheered, ran out into the yard, turned their faces to the sky, laughing and trying to catch the raindrops. Jesus said to the apostles, "You see an inconvenience. They see a gift from heaven. Who do you think is truly wise?" 36. A child's anger is pure, while an adult's resentment is toxic. A child may get angry, cry, and scream, but their anger is like a summer shower. It comes quickly and goes quickly, leaving behind a clear sky. An adult's resentment is like a stagnant pool of water. It festers, produces toxic fumes, and pollutes the soul. Two brothers were playing, then argued and snatched a toy from each other. Both cried and sulked. But just 5 minutes later, Jesus saw them with their arms around each other, sharing the toy. He said, "Their anger is a straw fire. It flares up and then dies out. Your resentment is like smoldering embers. burning you from the inside. Learn to get angry like a child, and more importantly, learn to make peace like them. 37. Children love unconditionally, by instinct. We adults often love with calculation. Is this person good to me? Do they bring any benefit? Children love naturally. They give their affection freely, without demands, without analysis. A leper who had been cast out was sitting in a hidden corner. Everyone avoided him. A little girl walked by, unafraid, placed a small flower in the leper's lap, smiled, and ran away. Jesus witnessed this and said to the crowd, "You offer expensive sacrifices in the temple, hoping for God's favor. This little girl has offered a sacrifice of unconditional love. Which sacrifice do you think flies higher before my Father?" 38. The sleep of a child is the image of absolute peace. Looking at a child sleeping soundly, with a serene face and steady breath, without a worry for tomorrow. It is the most vivid image of the peace that God wants to give to humanity. A complete rest in the arms of His providence. The boat was in a great storm, and the disciples frantically woke Jesus. After calming the sea, He saw a passenger's baby still sleeping soundly in its mother's arms, completely unaware of the storm that had just passed. He said, "Your faith is less than this child's sleep. It sleeps soundly because it trusts in its mother's arms. You cannot be at peace because you do not truly trust in your Father's arms." 39. Children are great theologians through their questions. A child may not know complex theological terms, but their simple questions often go straight to the heart of the greatest mysteries about God, life, and death. A little boy asked Jesus, "Teacher, when my grandfather died, where did he go? Does he see us from the clouds?" The disciples smiled at his innocence, but Jesus answered the boy with respect, then said to the disciples, "You laugh, but this boy's question contains the entire hope of life after death, a mystery that scholars have written thousands of pages to explain. Never underestimate a theological question that comes from a pure heart." 40. Children's creativity is not limited by reality. A stick can be a horse, a leaf can be a boat. A child's imagination is not bound by the laws of physics or adult logic. This ability to see what is not there is close to the creative power of God. Jesus saw a group of children using pebbles to cook. They invited him to eat a fish dish made from a flat pebble. He happily pretended to eat and praised its taste. Then he said, "You adults only see pebbles, but these children see a feast. To understand the kingdom of heaven, you must also have such an imaginative faith, to believe in the living bread in a simple wafer, to believe in the resurrection from an empty tomb." 41. A child's tears can soften the hardest of hearts. There is something in the sobbing of a child that can penetrate the toughest defenses of a person. It is not weakness, but a primal call to the instinct to protect and love, a reminder of our own fragility. A Roman soldier with a stone-cold face was on patrol. A little boy tripped and fell right in front of him and burst into tears. The soldier hesitated for a moment, then bent down, helped the boy up, and wiped his tears. Jesus said to those around, "The power of Rome can conquer nations, but the tears of a child can conquer a soldier's heart." 42. Children do not carry the burden of yesterday. Every morning, a child wakes up as if it were the first day of the world. Yesterday's mistakes are left behind. This ability to be renewed each day is an invaluable lesson in forgiveness and grace. A woman lamented to Jesus, "Teacher, I am always haunted by my past mistakes." Jesus pointed to her little son, who was happily running around after having fallen, and cried his eyes out the previous evening. He said, "Look at him. Yesterday's fall does not stop his joy today. Every dawn, my Father gives us new grace. Receive it like a child." 43. Children teach us how to receive a gift. When given a gift, children receive it with pure joy, without wondering about its value or feeling indebted. They simply enjoy the gift. This is how we should receive God's grace, with gratitude and joy, not with a sense of unworthiness. Jesus gave a man a miraculous catch of fish. The man was astonished and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." A child on the shore saw the boat full of fish and shouted with joy. Jesus said, "You see yourself as unworthy, while the child sees only a gift. My Father gives grace not because you are worthy, but because He loves. Learn to receive like a child." 44. The bonds between children transcend all divisions. On the playground, children from different families, even families in conflict, can still play happily together. Their natural unity is a powerful rebuke to the dividing walls that adults build. In the village, two families were in a bitter dispute, but their children were best friends and still secretly played together. Jesus said, "You adults build walls of separation, while children build bridges. Their hearts do not know the hatred that you nurture. Whoever wants to build the community of God, let them learn from these little peacemakers." 45. Children are bearers of living hope. In the darkest and most desperate times, the presence of a child, with their vitality and future ahead of them, is a powerful reminder that life goes on, and hope never dies. As the villagers were mourning a plague, the atmosphere was grim. In the midst of it all, the laughter of a child who had just recovered rang out. The sound was like a sunbeam breaking through the dark clouds. Jesus said, "Do you hear that? It is the sound of resurrection. In the midst of death, my Father always plants seeds of hope, and often those sprouts take the form of a child." 46. Children remind us of the fragility of life. Holding a child in our arms, we feel their smallness, fragility, and need for protection. It reminds us that our own lives are also precious and fragile, and that we must live each day consciously and with gratitude. The Apostle Peter, a strong fisherman, was boasting about his strength. Jesus placed a newborn baby in his arms. Peter suddenly became awkward and gentle. Jesus said, "Peter, your strength can pull a heavy net, but only your gentleness can embrace a life. Remember this fragility, so you will know to cherish the gift of life that my Father has given to you and to everyone." 47. Children can turn sadness into joy. With a sudden idea, a funny word, or an unexpected hug, a child can break the heavy atmosphere of sorrow and bring the light of laughter. They are little messengers of joy. A father was sitting sadly because of a failed harvest. His little daughter ran up, put a large leaf on her head like a hat, and danced a funny dance. The father couldn't help but laugh. Jesus, passing by, smiled and said to the father, "You see, your treasure is not in the field, but right here in your home." 48. A child's judgment is based on love, not rules. A child doesn't care if others follow all the rules correctly. They only care if that person loves them. Their value system places love above all else, an arrangement that the adult world often reverses. A woman considered a sinner brought water to Jesus. The disciples whispered about how she had broken many laws, but her little son ran and threw his arms around his mother. Jesus said, "You judge her by what she has done, but this child knows her only by her love. My Father's heart judges like the heart of this child. 49. Children are the most talented storytellers. A story retold through the lens of a child is stripped of adult complexities, retaining only the core elements, rich with emotion and magic. They are the preservers and transmitters of stories in their purest form. Jesus had just multiplied the loaves. When the disciples tried to explain the event with logic, they became confused. But a boy who had been there ran back to the village and said, "That teacher felt sorry for us because we were hungry, so he asked his Father in heaven, and the bread just kept coming and coming." Jesus overheard and said, "That is the most accurate theological summary of what just happened, mercy and providence." 50. Every child is a question God asks the world. Every time a child is born, it is not just a biological event. It is a question that God poses to humanity. What will you do with this gift? What kind of world will you build for this innocent soul? Will you love it as I love it? How we answer that question will determine our own future. When Jesus was born in a manger, the shepherds and the wise men came. King Herod sought to kill him. Later, holding another child, Jesus said, "This child is a question." The shepherds' answer was worship. The wise men's answer was gifts. Herod's answer was fear and violence. Each of you, every day, must answer the question this child poses, and your answer will be written in the book of the kingdom of heaven. 51. A child's hands hold nothing for themselves. An adult's hands learn to grasp, accumulate, and tighten. A child's hands are always open. They extend as easily to give as to receive. It is a lesson in non-attachment, a pristine generosity, before the world teaches us the fear of lack. Jesus broke a piece of bread and gave it to a little boy. Immediately the boy ran to his friend and broke off half for him. Jesus turned to his disciples, who had just been arguing about who was the greatest, and said, "Your hands calculate how much you will receive. This child's hands only think of sharing what he has. You want to enter the kingdom of heaven? Learn to open your hands like this." 52. Children talk to animals in the language of heaven. Humanity has lost its original harmony with nature. We look at animals with eyes of fear or domination. Children, with their innate and fearless connection, seem to still speak the language of the Garden of Eden, where humans and all creatures lived in peace. A fierce-looking dog ran up. The adults all stepped back warily. But a little girl stepped forward, without fear, and gently petted it. The dog wagged its tail and licked her hand. Jesus said, "You see a danger, while the little girl sees a friend." The dog does not sense domination. It senses love without judgment. That is the language that all of my Father's creations understand. 53. A child finds beauty where adults only see trash. A sparkling pebble, a broken piece of pottery, a withered leaf. A child's aesthetic sense is not shaped by market value or societal norms. It is the purest appreciation of beauty, an ability that adults have lost. Passing by a pile of old things, Jesus saw a boy joyfully pick up a tattered piece of bright blue cloth, admiring it like a treasure. He said to Andrew, "The world throws away its treasures every day, but the children of the kingdom of heaven know how to find them in the most unexpected places." 54. Children do not learn, they discover. For adults, learning can be a burden, a means to an end. For children, learning is an adventure. Every new piece of knowledge is a discovery, an aha moment that brings pure delight. A teacher of the law was trying to cram rules into his students' heads. They looked tired and bored. A little later, Jesus saw the same children gathered around a puddle, cheering as they discovered how tadpoles swim. He said to the teacher, "You try to fill their heads, but you must first light a fire in their hearts. Let them discover for themselves, and they will learn forever." 55. A child's fall is a lesson in getting back up. When we adults fall, we often carry shame, bitterness, and the fear of failure. When a child falls, they may cry, but then they will dust themselves off and continue running. Falling for them is a natural part of the game, not a sentence. A toddler learning to walk kept falling. Each time, the mother worried. But the boy would cry a little, then pull himself up and try to take another step. Jesus said to the mother, "Do not worry about the times he falls. Rejoice for every time he gets back up on his own." Faith is the same. It is not about never stumbling, but about always having the courage to rise after every fall. 56. Children's music comes from the heart, not from technique. A child sings not to perform, but to express their joy or sadness. Their voice may be off-key, but it contains absolute sincerity. It is the most primal music, unburdened by rules of technique or the judgment of listeners. In the temple courtyard, the Levites were singing hymns solemnly and perfectly, but in a corner, a little girl was humming a tune she had made up herself while dancing. Jesus said to his disciples, "Those men offer God the perfection of technique. This little girl offers him the perfection of joy. Who do you think my Father is listening to more attentively?" 57. A child's courage is not the absence of fear, but trust in their protector. A child may be afraid of the dark, but they will bravely enter it if a parent holds their hand. Their courage comes not from inner strength, but from absolute faith in someone bigger and stronger beside them. It is a perfect model for the courage of faith. During a storm, thunder rolled. A frightened boy hid in his father's arms. The father said, "Don't be afraid." The boy looked up, saw his father was calm, and his fear subsided. Jesus said, "Faith is not about facing the storm by yourself, but knowing that your heavenly Father is holding your hand in the storm." The father's peace became the son's courage. 58. Children don't build walls, they open doors. When a stranger arrives, an adult's reaction is suspicion and defense. A child's reaction is curiosity and openness. Their hearts do not have locked doors, but are always open to welcome new things. A person from a faraway land with strange clothes and language came to the village. The adults whispered and kept their distance, but a group of children curiously surrounded him, using gestures to communicate and inviting him to play. Jesus said, "When the kingdom of heaven comes, it will not enter through your locked doors, but through hearts as open as these children's." 59. A child's memory is woven with emotion, not events. A child may not remember exactly how an event happened, but they will remember vividly the feeling it brought. The feeling of safety, joy, fear, or being loved. Their hearts are the notebooks that record the truest emotions. When the disciples recounted the story of Jesus multiplying the loaves, they argued about the number of loaves and fish. But a little girl who was there said, "I don't remember how many loaves there were. I just remember my tummy was very happy that day." Jesus smiled. "Your memory records a miracle. Her memory records love. Both are true, but her memory is warmer." 60. A child's gratitude is simple and immediate. When they receive something, No matter how small, a child will express their joy and gratitude immediately with a smile, a hug, or a whispered "thank you." Their gratitude is not a social obligation, but a natural reflex of a joyful heart. A woman gave an orphan boy an apple. The boy shouted with delight and threw his arms around her. Jesus said to those around him, "10 lepers I healed, and only one returned to give thanks. This boy has taught the other 9 a lesson without saying a word." 61. A child's sorrow is as clear as a dewdrop. An adult's sorrow is often complex, mixed with regret, anger, and self-pity. A child's sorrow is pure. When they are sad, they are simply sad. Their tears are clear, containing nothing but the emotion of the moment. A little girl was sobbing because her cloth doll was torn. Her mother said, "It's just a doll, stop crying." But Jesus said to the mother, "Do not belittle her sorrow. To her, this is a real loss. My Father in heaven does not belittle any of his children's tears. Comfort her, for a heart that can grieve deeply is also a heart that can love deeply." 62. Children are natural philosophers of existence. Adults stop asking fundamental questions, but children do not. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where does the sky end? Their questions touch the core of philosophy and theology, reminding us of the great mysteries we have forgotten. A child asked her mother, "Mummy, where was I before I was born?" The mother didn't know how to answer. Jesus overheard and said, "This child is asking about the origin of life. It is the question that every wise person ponders. The answer lies in the heart of my Father, who knew her before she was formed." 63. Justice in a child's eyes is about sharing. When adults talk about justice, they think of laws, rights, and punishment. When a child says it's not fair, they usually mean that someone didn't get to share. For them, justice is synonymous with sharing and caring. A mother divided a cake between her 2 children, but accidentally gave one a slightly bigger piece. The child with the smaller piece said, "That's not fair." But instead of demanding more, he just looked at his brother's piece. The older brother immediately broke off a piece of his own and gave it to his younger brother. Jesus said, "The law of Moses is engraved on stone. The law of justice of the kingdom of heaven is written in the hearts of children who know how to share." 64. A child's hug has the power of reconciliation. Between 2 tense adults, an unexpected hug from a child can melt the ice of anger. It is a wordless act of reconciliation, reminding both of a love that is greater than their disagreement. 2 neighbors were shouting at each other about a tree that was growing over the property line. The son of one of them ran out and, without a word, hugged both of their legs. Both adults fell silent and looked down at the child. The argument could not continue. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Sometimes those peacemakers are only as tall as your knees. 65. Children measure time by memories, not by clocks. Adults measure time in hours, minutes, seconds, with schedules and deadlines. Children measure time by memorable events. The time we flew a kite, the day we ate cake, the time I fell and it hurt. Their life is a string of memorable moments, not a linear progression of time. The disciples complained that they had spent too much time in one village. But Jesus was listening to a little girl tell a story. "Yesterday I saw a blue bird. The day before I found a beautiful stone." He said, "You worry about the time you have lost. This little girl is collecting treasures of time. A rich life is not a long life, but a life full of beautiful memories. 66. A child's home is where there is love, not a structure of bricks and stones. A child can live in a dilapidated hut and still feel safe and happy if there is love. They can also live in a magnificent mansion and feel lonely and lost if it lacks the warmth of family. Jesus visited the home of a wealthy tax collector and the home of a poor fisherman. He said, "I see cold walls in the rich man's house, and I hear warm laughter in the poor man's hut. My Father does not dwell in structures made by human hands, but wherever there is love. Children always know where their real home is." 67. Children teach us the art of starting over. A child builds a sand castle, the waves wash it away, and they do not despair. They will start building a new one. The ability to start again from scratch, with undiminished enthusiasm and hope, is a phenomenal strength that adults often lose. A potter's creation was ruined at the last minute. He became angry and was about to throw away the whole lump of clay. His son picked up that lump of clay and started molding a small animal. Jesus said, "You see a failure. Your son sees a new opportunity. My Father's grace is like that, too. It can always turn your broken pieces into a new beginning." 68. A child's curiosity is the door to worship. When a child looks up at the starry sky and asks, "Who made all of this?" it is not just a scientific question. It is the first step of wonder, of recognizing a being greater than oneself. Curiosity leads to awe, and awe leads to worship. Jesus and his disciples were watching the sunset. The disciples commented on the colors. A child was just silent with wide eyes, and then whispered, "So beautiful." Jesus said, "You analyze the beauty. This child worships it. To truly pray, you must first relearn how to be amazed." 69. The weakness of a child calls forth the strength of the community. The fragility and dependence of a child are not a burden, but the glue that binds a family, a community together. The shared task of caring for and protecting the next generation makes adults more selfless and more tightly connected to one another. A family had a sick child. The whole village came together to help. One brought herbs, another brought food, another came to pray. Jesus said, "The weakness of one child has brought forth the strength of an entire community. It is when you care for the least among you that you become the strongest in love." 70. Every child is a letter God sends to the future generation. In that letter, it is not written with ink, but with flesh and blood, with a pure soul. The content of the letter is a reminder of eternal values: love, hope, forgiveness. And the letter also comes with a question. How will you read this letter and respond? When Jesus placed a child in the midst of the apostles, he was not just placing a body. He was giving them a living message. He said, "I will not be with you always, but my Father will always send messengers like this to you. Learn to read what is written in their hearts, for it is the good news written for every generation." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 71. A child's prayer flies straight to God, with no intermediary needed. We adults often pray with formulas, rituals, and solemn words, sometimes more out of habit than heart. A child's prayer is a direct conversation, without an intermediary, unfiltered by theology or self-consciousness. It flies straight and pure. In the synagogue, the high priest was offering a long and formal prayer. In a quiet corner, a little girl whispered, "God, please let my cat find its way home soon." Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "The priest's voice may echo throughout the synagogue, but this little girl's whisper is echoing throughout heaven." The prayer most pleasing to my Father is not the most grammatically correct, but the most sincere. 72. Children forgive even the inanimate objects that hurt them. An adult who trips on a stone might get angry and kick it away. A child who falls after crying might go back and pat the stone. They do not attribute malice to the world. This ability to not resent even inanimate objects is a form of forgiveness at the deepest level. A boy was running and tripped over a tree root, scraping his knee. He cried. His father said, "That naughty tree root!" But after he stopped crying, the boy went over, patted the root, and said, "It's okay, tree root." Jesus said, "You adults hold grudges for years. This boy has taught you how to forgive in minutes. Do not attribute malice to others, and you will find it easier to forgive." 73. In the game of peekaboo, children learn the mystery of absence and reunion. This simple game teaches a profound theological truth. Something can disappear from sight but still exist, and its return brings indescribable joy. It is the first lesson in faith in God's unseen presence and hope in the resurrection. Jesus sat watching a mother play peekaboo with her infant child. Each time the mother's face reappeared, the baby would squeal with delight. He said to John, "Mankind fears separation and death, but this baby, through a game, has understood the joy of reunion. That is the joy of the kingdom of heaven, the joy of realizing that what we love is never truly lost." 74. A child's why is the key that opens all doors of wisdom. Adults stop asking why and accept things as they are. But a child's why challenges every assumption. It is the beginning of all understanding. A civilization only progresses when it never stops asking why. A scribe was explaining a complex law. A little girl kept asking, "But why?" The scribe began to lose his patience. Jesus intervened. "You have the answer for what and how, but you have forgotten the most important question this little girl is asking. All laws become meaningless if we do not know why they exist." 75. Children find joy in repetition. We adults are easily bored by repetition. We are always seeking novelty. A child can listen to the same story, play the same game over and over again with undiminished joy. They teach us that joy is not in novelty, but in love for the thing itself. A father was telling his son a story. The boy insisted on hearing the same story he already knew by heart. The father sighed. Jesus said, "Friend, you seek new stories, while your son seeks comfort in the familiar. My Father's love is the same. It is not a love that is always changing, but a faithful love, repeating his promise every day. And that is our greatest comfort." 76. A child does not distinguish between work and play. When a child helps their mother shell peas or helps their father tidy up, they often do it with the same joyful spirit as when they are playing. The line between labor and leisure is blurred. They teach us that any work can become joyful if we do it with a free heart. A potter was working with a scowl on his face. His son also took a lump of clay and happily molded it beside him. Jesus said, "Both father and son are doing the same thing, but one is laboring and the other is creating. My Father's yoke is easy, not because the work is light, but because he invites us to work with the spirit of a child at play. 77. Children are the guardians of the treasure of silence. In the noisy world of adults, silence is often seen as empty or awkward. But a child can sit quietly alone for a long time, completely at peace with their inner world. They are teachers who show us the value of stillness. Jesus saw a boy sitting quietly under a tree, just watching a caterpillar crawl on a leaf. The disciples were about to call the boy. Jesus signaled them to stop. Do not break his silence. Right now, he is communing with creation. You go into the desert to seek silence, but this boy has found a whole desert of peace on a single leaf. 78. Children believe in stories. When a child hears a story about dragons or heroes, they believe it with their whole soul. This ability to believe in what one cannot see is the foundation of faith. We adults demand proof. Children only need a trustworthy storyteller. The Apostle Thomas said, "How can we believe in stories about angels and the kingdom of heaven that we cannot see?" Jesus pointed to a group of children who were engrossed in listening to an old woman tell a fairy tale. Thomas, your faith should be like that of those children. They believe the old woman's words, not because they see, but because they love and trust the storyteller. Do you trust me, who is telling you about my Father? 79. For a child, forever is a promise, not a concept of time. When a child says, "I will love you forever," they are not talking about an endless period of time. They are expressing a love in the present that is so intense they cannot imagine it ever ending. It is a promise from the heart. A little girl said to Jesus, "I will follow you forever." Peter laughed and said, "She is too young to understand what forever means." Jesus replied, "Peter, you understand forever with your head, and you see it as long. This little girl understands forever with her heart, and she sees it as right now. Her promise is more sincere than your calculated oaths." 80. Children have an innate sense of the sacred. A child may not understand doctrines, but they have a natural sensitivity to the sacred. They can be reverently silent in a solemn place or feel the specialness of a ceremony without anyone explaining it. When Jesus entered the temple and saw the noisy commerce, he was angry. After he drove them out, the space became quiet. A lost child wandered in, looked at the vast space, and began to sing a simple song. His singing made the space sacred again. Jesus said, "Through the praise of children and infants, you, Lord, have established a stronghold." 81. Children measure wealth by love, not money. A child might refuse an expensive toy in exchange for a hug from their parents. The currency in their world is love, attention, and the time others spend with them. A rich man boasted to Jesus about his fortune and what he could give his children, but his son was happily playing with the son of a poor laborer who only had time to make his son a kite from paper. Jesus said, "You can give your son everything except the one thing he needs most, the thing that poor father is giving his son, yourself." 82. A child's ownership is temporary and shared. A child might say, "This is mine," but that ownership is very flexible. They are willing to trade, lend, and share. For them, possession is for enjoyment, not for hoarding. Two children were arguing, "This stick is mine." A moment later, they were using the same stick together as a mast for an imaginary boat. Jesus said to his disciples who were worried about dividing an inheritance, "You see possessions as something to be divided and owned. These children see it as something to play with together. Who do you think is richer?" 83. A child is not afraid of getting dirty. Children are not afraid of mud. They are ready to throw themselves into life. They remind us that true life is sometimes a bit messy and not always perfectly clean. Holiness is not about being separate from the world, but about engaging with it with a pure heart. A mother scolded her child for getting his new clothes dirty while playing in a puddle. Jesus said, "You worry about the clothes, but be happy that his soul is joyful. I came not to keep you clean from the world, but to wash you clean after you have lived fully in it." 84. A child's drawing is a window into their inner world. The scribbled lines and strange colors in a child's drawing are not a lack of skill. It is a symbolic language, a map of their inner world, of joys and fears that they cannot express in words. A father complained, "My son drew the sun purple. How silly." Jesus looked at the drawing and said, "Perhaps your son did not draw the sun you see. He is drawing the feeling of warmth the sun gives him. Do not try to correct his drawing. Try to read it." 85. Children are masters of creating joy from nothing. An adult needs conditions and means to have fun. A child can create a whole world of adventure with just a cardboard box. They are living proof that joy comes from within, not depending on external circumstances. Jesus saw a group of children playing joyfully in an empty courtyard. They were playing market with leaves and pebbles. He said, "You adults seek joy in noisy marketplaces. These children create their own market right here. The kingdom of heaven is the same. It is not a place to go to, but a reality to be created within your own heart." 86. Children have the ability to heal with their presence. Sometimes, without a word or action, just the innocent, carefree presence of a child is enough to soothe a suffering soul, reminding them of the beauty and simplicity of life. A man was sitting in sorrow after losing his wife. He did not want to talk to anyone. His grandchild, a small child, simply came and quietly sat in his lap, resting their head on his chest. A long while later, the man began to cry tears of release. Jesus said, "The words of the wise could not do what the silence of a child has done." 87. A child's obedience comes from love, not fear. A child joyfully and willingly obeys the parents they love. That obedience is an act of trust. It is the model for our obedience to God, not out of fear of punishment, but out of trust in His love and wisdom. A Roman soldier commanded his child, who obeyed instantly out of fear. Another father gently asked his child for a favor, and the child did it happily. Jesus said, "Both received obedience, but one received it from a slave, the other from a son. My Father seeks sons, not slaves." 88. Children do not see a person's past. When they meet someone, children do not care about the mistakes or sins that person has committed in the past. They interact with the person of the present. They give each person a chance to be a new version of themselves in their eyes. The Samaritan woman at the well was ostracized by the whole village because of her past. But when she was talking with Jesus, a child from the village ran up and gave her a fig. Jesus said to the woman, "The whole village looks at you and sees the past. This child looks at you and sees someone who is thirsty. So do I." 89. Children are the weavers of family bonds. A child is an invisible but incredibly strong thread that connects father and mother, grandparents and grandchildren. For their sake, adults learn to sacrifice, to be patient, and to love each other more. They are the center, the heart of the family. A husband and wife were angry with each other, not speaking a word. Their small child took one's hand, then ran to take the other's hand, trying to pull them together. They couldn't help but laugh and make up. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers. Sometimes they are the smallest ones in your house." 90. The height of wisdom is to return to being a child. The journey of life is not a straight line upward, accumulating knowledge and experience. The true spiritual journey is a circle, where after having gone through everything, one realizes that the highest truth lies in the simplicity, trust, and humility of a child. An old scholar, after many years of studying the holy books, came to Jesus and said, "Teacher, I have learned so much." Jesus replied, "Good. Now go and learn to forget it all. Learn to laugh for no reason, to believe without proof, and to love without conditions. Only then will you truly begin to be wise." And so our journey of contemplation through 90 philosophies, inspired by Jesus' teaching on children, comes to an end. We have walked a long path together, not to accumulate more knowledge, but to make a journey back to what is purest and simplest in our souls. We realize that the door to the kingdom of heaven is sometimes not opened by the keys of scholarly wisdom, but is glimpsed through the clear lens of a child. The greatest truths are often whispered in naive questions, and the deepest peace is found in a smile without calculation. Hopefully, after this program, each of us will not only look at a child with different eyes, but will also learn to look at our own lives with the eyes of a child, full of wonder, complete in faith, and always ready to begin again. And now, Church Audio warmly invites you to take a small action. This week, take a moment to truly slow down and listen to a child near you. Look into their eyes when they speak. Cherish their story, no matter how trivial it may seem, and play a game with them. Who knows, in that very moment, you might hear the whisper of God meant just for you. Which philosophy touched your soul the most? Please share your feelings in the comments section below. Each of your comments is a flower that helps make the garden of our community more beautiful. If you found these moments meaningful, please give the program a like to spread this peaceful energy. And please share this video with your loved ones as a spiritual gift you want to send them. Finally, if you are new here and not yet a member of the Church Audio community, please press the subscribe button and the notification bell so we can continue to journey together on the spiritual paths, finding stillness amidst our busy lives. May God bless you and grant that our souls may always keep the simplicity, purity, and joy of a child. Church Audio sends its warmest greetings and looks forward to seeing you in our next programs.